the agenda and the packet, and I got to you guys with both of them. So if somebody goes onto the website, they should be able to get to us.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know where this one's from.
That's the one, that's the agenda for the workshop portion. And that's the meeting link that I set up when I sent out, when it was just gonna be a PAC meeting. That's the meeting that I set up for the PAC meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. All right, so let's go ahead and really go ahead and hit the record button.
It should be recording, I think.
Oh, is it recording now? Okay, okay.
I did request for screen share, and I don't know if that's been granted quite yet.
Yeah.
I pressed yes.
Try again. Can you get there, or is it still?
Oh no, it's allowing me. Yeah, just give me one moment
perfect.
while I set this up.
Okay, so we're juggling a couple of things here, so my apologies to everybody that's online and for those of you in the room as well. So our chair is not here tonight for the planning commission meeting, and our vice chair is on Zoom. So we've got a pitch hitter in the chair seat. So everybody give Jolene just a little bit of grace here. So Jolene, in the book, you're just going to open the planning commission meeting. You'll run through those first couple of items. And then when you get to the part where it says workshop, and you're not going to be able to, well, actually you could approve minutes because you do have a quorum. So we could approve minutes, or if you don't want to do that, we could table it and do it next month at the next meeting. So I'll just let you start with the first agenda and.
Okay, so I hereby call this meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we please have a roll call for attendance?
Sure can. Chair Barisi is absent. Commissioner Irons.
Present.
Commissioner Stensland.
Present.
Commissioner Tenike is excused. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Connell.
Present.
And Commissioner Taylor.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum of planning commission.
Okay, we might as well approve the minutes.
Okay.
No, where are they?
I will make a motion that we approve the minutes of the last meeting. Second.
Okay, so the minutes are approved. Is that what I?
No, we need
Nope.
to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any commissioner discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye. Aye. Sorry, technical difficulties on this one. Aye.
That's okay.
Any oppose? Okay, so now they're approved. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we're having a workshop.
We're having a workshop. And so at this point in time, I'm just going to turn the agenda over to Anais with oh, and I just got a text message that Mike is not going to make the meeting either. So, okay. So we do have everybody from Planning Commission is going to be here, and sadly, I'm not seeing any of our PAC members. So, Anais, I think this is the Planning Commission workshop, so I'll let you take it away.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Carla. All right, I'm going to share my screen. I too have multiple things up on my screen, so it's just a matter of managing everything here. Bear with me. Okay. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me just quickly rearrange some things here so I have everything in front of me. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for a joint Planning Commission and Public Advisory Committee meeting. Sorry to hear that we don't have any PAC members in attendance, but this was meant to be an opportunity for the Planning Commission to join the PAC on the Comp Plan Development Code update process that the city has been undertaking, and really an opportunity for the Commission to be brought up to speed on what we've been working on. So with that in mind, quick agenda. So I'll do a little recap of the project. I want to provide an update on the engagement that occurred in May, and what came out of that, which is primarily some changes we made to the draft future land use map, which has been in the hands of the PAC. And of course, maybe some of our Planning Commission members were also there actually at the last PAC meeting. So you'll see I'll call out some key changes there. The bulk of the meeting is going to be focused on some policy discussions that come out of the draft goals and policies for your new comprehensive plan. So the packet this evening was large and had a lot of content. I will provide kind of a high-level tour of the new comp plan policy chapters, and then we have a handful of discussion questions that I think will really help bring this draft further along. And then the last portion of this meeting is where we're going to introduce the new draft zoning map, and start talking about what some of those kind of basic zoning amendments might look like. There will be a second joint Planning Commission work session with the PAC in mid-October that will be focused primarily on code. So we're going to kind of start introducing it today as kind of the implementation legs of the comp plan, and then we're really going to focus on it at the last and the final meeting in October, which will be a very similar setup to this. Okay, I'm going to talk for a little bit, but please wave your hands if you want me to slow down or if you have any questions. So Planning Commission members, I'm sure you've seen this before, but this project is a comprehensive plan update. It is also a revamp of your code. A lot of work has gone into understanding how this community has grown and changed over time. Understand what are the community's priorities, values, future aspirations, and how do we use that to develop a roadmap to guide growth and manage change over time. And that is codified in policy language as well as new and revised development code language to support those aspirations, those priorities, etc. We kicked this work off about almost 2 years ago, a year and a half probably. We are at the final stages. So we have done a ton of work and we're starting to shift gears into the adoption process once we have finalized this draft of the goals and policies for your new comprehensive plan. And we've worked through the new zoning map, comp plan map, and some development code updates. So the end is starting to become clearer and clearer. Okay, so as I mentioned, I was out there in person in May with our team, and we had an open house as well as an in-person PAC meeting where we were able to kind of have a deep dive on the draft future land use map. So as a reminder, we've got two maps in Boardman. We have a zoning map and we have a future land use map, also known as a comp plan map. We've sort of labeled it as FLUM, F-L-U-M. So if you see that acronym anywhere, that means future land use map, and that is associated with the comprehensive plan. So we had a deep dive on that map in May. We also had an open house. We had about 20 folks that showed up. We also had an online survey in English and Spanish that just helped mirror some of the in-person discussion that we were having, that we had planned at the open house. We had a lot of great feedback on the map. So generally speaking, we shared the draft future land use map. We described what these various land use areas might become in Boardman, giving some kind of imagery and some narrative that described that. Generally speaking, we had some feedback that this was on the right track. We also had a couple of interesting comments about some refinements, and I'm going to point those out in a moment. There's still a very strong demand for more retail services, small businesses, etc. We also know from past engagement efforts, which was also echoed at the open house in May, this desire for a stronger community center field, so more parks, playgrounds, things like that. There's once again, it's funny how these themes continue to echo throughout every phase of this project. But the importance of walkability, multimodal streetscapes, etc., still really rose to the top. So, this is a very rudimentary, this is a draft map with some very rudimentary red circles here. My apologies, but my hope here was to do a better graphic show of what changed from the first iteration. So first of all, the future land use map is organized around six categories or six designations: neighborhood character, village character, civic center, employment center, industrial center, and parks and public facilities. Um, and these designations really are kind of the bucket that holds a variety of different zoning districts within them. So there were a couple of key changes that we made based on some feedback that we got from the PAC and the public in May. The primary was an interest in seeing this Main Street concept, which we currently have. I don't know if folks can see my cursor. Can I see a nod if
Yep.
you can? Excellent. So there was interest in seeing this Main Street concept, which is currently focused by City Hall right now, extend further south. So there was interest in seeing a little bit more of a multimodal mixed use node that could extend a bit further south here. So that's that first element here. And that was something that we decided would be an interesting move and we would carry forward in this revised future land use map. Um, some other kind of key changes here is this area, this first interchange here, was changed to Civic Center, so that it could be zoned as community center. And Jamin's going to talk a little bit more about what could occur in those areas there. Some other changes too was extending the industrial center, so port industrial zoning, from the east a little bit further west. And then also recognizing the Sage Center as kind of a community, as a rec center, and so designating it as part of parks and public facilities. So a couple of little tweaks here that I think really hone in on some of the nuances that exist on the ground in Boardman. I'll pause there and see if there are any questions before I continue on. Okay, well, let me know. Um, all right. So this is where there's a lot of content, and I'll try to kind of provide a high-level summary here. I don't expect everyone to have read every word. However, if you did read every word of your packet and reviewed the draft language for all these comp plan policy chapters, extra gold stars to you. You are far ahead of the game. So thanks in advance. So the comprehensive plan, I'm speaking to a planning commission where you likely have used the comprehensive plan before. It's wholly out of date, as we know. It has a pretty strong regulatory framework and planning context. I'll kind of reiterate some high-level speaking points about why we have a comp plan, how we use them. Comprehensive plans, as you already know, are mandated across Oregon. Every city and every county needs to have one. It is a city's kind of blueprint or guide for how to manage future growth over a 20-year horizon. It sets goals, policies, and actions based on a vision. All the information in a comprehensive plan, all the policy direction must be data driven. It must reside within factual basis, as they call it. And that factual base comes through as a lot of the technical work that cities undertake, like transportation systems plans, economic opportunities analysis, housing needs assessments, things like that. So those are considered the factual base from which policies can be derived. And in addition, the comprehensive plan also needs to comply with the applicable statewide planning goals that are relevant to the city. So I have a list of them on the right, and there's about 17, and we have about they're a little out of order because not all of the goals apply to all of to every community, but they are listed here on the right. I guess I'll pause quickly, but I'm just curious for those folks that are on the line, planning commission members, if you have any like initial thoughts or reactions, or if you can share a little bit about what your latest interaction has been with the current comprehensive plan.
So the two planning commissioners in the room are our newest planning commissioners.
Okay,
Uh,
so they haven't seen it yet.
Both have some background with planning commission, but not specifically the city's planning commission. David, online, and Sam, David has been a city councilor in the past. Sam's been on the planning commission quite a while. They probably both have seen bits and pieces of the comp plan. But it's been a while since we've talked about it in any focused manner, other than the conversation that we're updating it. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the comp plan I expect as of late has been rather unusable. It's fairly old and outdated. It's probably not even in a format that's easily searchable in a PDF. So, the comp plan we know is what you use as planning commission members to make land use decisions, and some really important ones at that. So the comprehensive plan is kind of your framework for how you make those land use decisions. The zoning and the code allows you to implement those decisions. So it is really important that you have an updated comp plan that accurately reflects kind of how and where the city is growing and how the community wants to manage that growth. Um, so I'm going to give an overview of kind of the organization of this comp plan. So typically in the past, and this is how it is somewhat for your current comp plan, it's organized around statewide planning goals. Those are kind of the chapters of the comprehensive plan. In this new iteration, we have 4 chapters instead of about 13 or 14 of them, and they are organized around topic areas. Every topic area covers the applicable statewide planning goal, but it also covers some themes that rose to the top through some of the engagement that we did throughout this process. So I would say that first and foremost, this comprehensive plan is organized differently than your current one and is based on thematic areas rather than statewide planning goals. So each of these slides here just gives you a little overview of what changed or what is changing from the current comprehensive plan. This first chapter is people. I would say it's the lightest and most easily digestible chapter of all 4 of them. It covers goal 1, which is the city's goal, the state's goal on citizen involvement. It is short, and as I mentioned here, the change from the current plan is more in spirit than in substance. Typically, goal 1 or citizen involvement is primarily focused on treating public involvement as like standard noticing and hearing proceedings, etc. The new draft goals and policies in this chapter really try and reflect the community that is on the ground today, and sets bilingual engagement removal as kind of like the baseline expectation to the extent that the city has capacity and resources. And so that's really kind of the ethos of this first chapter. Chapter 2, on the other hand, is actually a very robust chapter. It is pretty significant. This is the development chapter. It covers some of the more kind of heavy hitter topic areas. So it covers housing, which responds to statewide planning goal 10. It covers economic development, which is goal 9, land use proceedings, which is goal 2, and urbanization, which is goal 14. It is informed by a number of technical exercises that the community or the city has been doing over the last year or two, including your housing needs analysis, your housing capacity analysis, your new economic opportunities analysis. So it really brings together a handful of really important pieces of work that your community has done. I would say, yeah, as the slide says here, the main headline here is that we don't have enough land that fits within the current UGB. So this chapter does commit the city to planning for UGB expansion. So this is kind of the biggest single policy direction in the plan, and you'll kind of see some a lot of language that kind of describes the where, the why, and the how. But that is kind of the main, we're kind of starting to see what is the trajectory here that is being set through this comp plan, and it starts with planning for a UGB expansion. Oh yeah, here's a kind of continuation of those high level points in this chapter. So we address data centers explicitly as both an economic driver, but also a strain on land and water and energy resources. And it also sets the city up to be part of a broader statewide conversation about data center impacts that are now underway at the state level. So there's a lot of language in this chapter that really emphasizes coordination with the city and all the all the various agencies that are involved in kind of this economic engine. Um, there's also several additional policy directions that don't exist in the current one. We used to have a future urban holding zone with differentiate with in the old comp plan map. We've removed that and we've identified kind of differentiated comp plan designations for all the urbanizable land within the UGB. And this is done so that we understand what future land uses could be, which aids in infrastructure planning and eventual annexation. So those are really guided by each area's intended use in the future. So it kind of expands those designations outwards so we can get a better sense of what these lands could look like in the future and plan accordingly. Whereas the comprehensive plan kind of extends to the boundaries of the UGB, I'll note that the zoning map only extends to the boundaries of the city limits. So it is really in the comp plan map or the future land use map where we can kind of think bigger and broader and understand what is happening just on the other side of city limits that may impact how the city grows up or out. It also sets some annexation conditions. So these are going to be important for your land use decisions. Some service, so infrastructure and service sequencing requirements. Things like prohibiting the extension of water without some sewer commitment. This is mainly to address the groundwater contamination concerns we know we have. And then also it directs the city to coordinate land use authority over UGB lands with the county. This is mostly to help prevent that rural density parcelization that would then foreclose any planned urban development. The other thing it does as well is it establishes a framework for designating urban reserves beyond the UGB to protect the land needed for future growth, and then also really echoes the sentiment for development that is compact, walkable, and has a defined city center. I'll stop there if anyone needs to digest all of that for a moment.
I would just say chapter 2, just for the planning commission's benefit. Chapter 2 is really robust because it incorporates both the housing and the economic, so goals 9 and 10. So there's a lot there. At some point, Cascadia Partners they've also created kind of a spreadsheet of the current policies so that when we get closer to adoption or if questions arise, that we are tracking what policies are the same, what policies have been refined, and then also what policies are new. So as you go through that, don't feel like you have to go back and read the old comp plan to get a sense of that. We're tracking that. So that is a question. If you ask that question, we should be able to answer that fairly easily.
Yeah, that's right.
I think chapter 2 is, and I don't mean to diminish chapter 3, which we're going to move to next, because that's our services chapter. But chapter 2 is really about how and where and why we grow.
Yeah. And I will just give you a Cliff Note version of that spreadsheet. There are more new policies than not. So you'll see that there's your current comprehensive plan was actually rather slim in a couple of areas, and we have there's a lot. There are many more new policies than there are like deleted or revised. So but yeah, we do have that spreadsheet that will be helpful for tracking both with DLCD when they review this as well as this group. Okay, so I'm going to move on to chapter 3. So this is about services, and here we're covering parks and recreation, so goal 8, public facilities, and infrastructure and transportation. So this is also a pretty hefty chapter. It builds off of all the good work that the community has already done. So you have your first ever Parks Master Plan, which was just adopted last year. You have your new transportation systems plan from last year as well. And then in addition, you have a number of public facilities plans that are being updated or are underway, like the Source Water Protection Plan, the Water System Master Plan, the Water Management and Conservation Plan. All of these things are inputs into the goals of and the draft policies of the comprehensive plan. They help kind of form the factual basis that drives the policy direction stated here. So what's different here than your current comp plan is we're treating all of these pieces of infrastructure as one single coordinated system rather than separate utilities. And similar to what I mentioned in chapter 2, we're also adding some new policy direction that requires water capacity planning be coordinated with land use and economic decisions. So that commitments to large industrial users don't compromise the city's ability to serve its residents. Any thoughts or comments here before I move on? Okay. And then lastly, chapter 4. So this is nature. This is also kind of a sneaky one in that it also is fairly hefty. It covers natural resources, environmental quality, natural hazards, and energy conservation. It kind of has two parts to it. The first is really concentrated on resource protection, and then there's a second element of this chapter that's focused on climate and hazard resilience. The city has just participated in the county's Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan, its 2024 update. So we have really nice, fresh, new, relevant information for what those natural hazards are that the city is vulnerable to. It recognizes drought, wildfire, extreme heat, windstorm, etc., as kind of those real and growing risks. And it highlights kind of ways in which the city may address those over the long term. It also highlights energy, and kind of centers that data center concentration as a big resource question. So it encourages large energy users to participate in applicable kind of large load tariff programs. It also aligns some cultural resource protection with some new state rules that came out last year on tribal coordination. So there's a lot going on here. The plan does carry forward the city's existing Goal 5 resource protections. So what I mean when I say that is the city has inventories of its own natural and cultural resources, and so we're kind of continuing to bring that factual basis forth through this iteration of the comp plan. We haven't remapped any natural resources or cultural resources. Any questions here before I move us on to a couple of high-level policy discussion questions? Okay. So that was a lot, but I'd like, if possible, to focus on a couple of questions here, and I'd maybe have Carla introduce some of these ideas. But we have there's a couple things here. So the first is there's been some ongoing discussion about the West Glen neighborhood. It is currently outside of city limits and within the UGB. And we understand that the West Glen neighborhood kind of has some conflicting land uses. It is zoned as one thing and has kind of uses on the ground that are much different than what the zone may allow. And there's an interest in understanding if we were to designate this area in the future land use map, what would it be? Would it be residential? Would it be, commercial, industrial? That's kind of the first question that we want to ask. And Carl, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that.
No, the county, yes, I do. Stephanie attended on Tuesday night, the county planning commission meeting, where they're talking about the zone, a zone text change, that would, be applicable in not just West Glen, but other areas, both within the UGB and outside the UGB around trucking facilities. So Commissioner Taylor used to sit on the county planning commission. He probably recalls approving some conditional use permits for home-based businesses, that were basically a sometimes small, sometimes not so small commercial trucking operation. Many of those are concentrated in the West Glen area, and that's kind of where the West Glen conversation comes from. There was an appeal of one of those decisions that took place adjacent to Irrigan. The city of Boardman joined Irrigan in appealing the county planning commission decision. The parties took that decision, that appeal, all the way to LUBA, and LUBA did reverse the county's decisions. So they were found to be in conflict between two portions of their code, and so they're having to address how they're gonna deal with those trucking operations in those areas that are zoned with a specific purpose for residential use. It's unclear where they're going to go. Nothing really clear came out of the work session on Tuesday night from what Stephanie shared with me. But it just has kind of raised the question. My guess is that a good portion of the people in the West Glen area are going to want it to continue to have some kind of residential designation upon annexation. But there are some there who probably would want to elevate their business ahead of their residential use. And the problem with the current zoning is that it's not consistent with city zoning. So the city currently has a lot of regulations that don't allow trucks on city streets, that don't allow trucking businesses in residential neighborhoods. I mean, businesses are supposed to be in a commercial zone for a reason. And so there is a conflict there between what the current zoning is and what annexation could look like. So it just kind of raises a question. We may not answer that question tonight.
Yeah.
But I would be curious if any of the planning commissioners or anybody else, I think we've got a couple of other people. Really, can you scroll over? Who else has joined the conversation? So I see that Councillor Pettigrew is on the call. I'm gonna assume that Richard is Richard Rockwell, which would be Councillor Rockwell as well. And I don't know, they may, anybody, planning commissioner, council members, I appreciate hearing any of your thoughts on that. And if you're in the room, make sure your mic's on.
Can you hear me okay? This is Councilor Rockwell, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, Carla laid it out. Like, I think it's a lot more difficult of a decision than just saying yay or nay. Like you say, we move forward and tried to annex and people agreed to it. Obviously, there's going to be some pushback from the people that have these types of businesses. So we got to have something squared away. Hopefully that appeases everybody. But at the same time, it's like, are we going to always make exceptions? Like it's such a tough subject because nobody's going to be not everybody's going to be happy with the decision. Like there's going to be people that are just going to be mad no matter what. So I don't know. I would like to see annexation, and the reason why I say that is because I want to see everything improve. I want to see clean water and clean sewer, and but at the same time, I want them to be able to keep their wells and have the property the way they want and all that stuff. So it's like I think we need to research what what kind of zoning fits all those things together, and hopefully we make a good decision for everybody long term, not short term, long term. I don't know. I don't know if that made any sense, but that's how I feel about it.
I think, just my personal opinion, is that West Glen, if the city brings it in, is gonna have to kind of stay at that, because those are 2 acre, right?
Some of them are an acre.
Some of them are an
They're
acre.
definitely all 1 acre, yeah.
So it's one of those things, if you actually bring it in and say, okay, this is gonna be we're not gonna move the trucking, you have a right, okay, but you're not gonna be able to break that up. I say you know, just talking off my head here, that you're inside the city, but it will not allow you to break it up any more than what it already is.
I think one of the added difficulties that we have, particularly.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. I forget that I have a loud voice and Zoom can't hear me.
Thank you.
One of the added difficulties that I think we face is the conflict with our TSP and whether or not some of those freight routes, it will be in conflict with some of the freight routes. So I just, thinking about some of that as we move forward too.
Approximately, how many businesses are we talking about that are in that neighborhood?
There's one of the numbers
One of the numbers I remember is there's like 70 plus or minus residential units in West Glen. It depends on how you define West Glen as well.
Okay.
There's a subdivision of West Glen, and then there's the area that a lot of people refer to as the West Glen area. If you get to the subdivision that's West Glen, I think you get to about 70 residential units. And a portion of that West Glen is actually outside even the urban growth boundary. It's south of the canal, and there's 6 or 8 parcels or lots on that side. I want to say one of the numbers I heard through the code enforcement process with the county is that there were over 30 trucking operations in that neighborhood. There's not that many that have been approved.
Right. So they have approved 11 conditional use permits for home occupations in the Boardman urban growth boundary. So I didn't count the ones on the other side of the canal, but 11 have gone through the approval process through the county for a home occupation.
Right. And some of those initially, I think they have addressed some through enforcement and some have ceased operations.
Okay.
So it's kind of a moving target, but yeah.
I just feel like you need to figure out what's best for the most number of residents, and then that's the answer. So that's why I kind of wanted to know that.
Yeah.
But if there were over 30 of them, I guess it does depend on if they were approved, but.
Again, I think we're down to a dozen probably that have some level of approval, but with the Luba decision, those approvals will have to be reevaluated.
Yeah.
Or the county has proposed some changes to the text of their development code that could allow, they currently allow a truck, and the initial proposal was to allow 2 trucks. Which means those larger operations would continue to would be under an enforcement and would have to change operations or cease operations.
And I think that's the other important thing too, is for the county, you can have an individual truck or tractor trailer there, and it would be in 100% compliance. For the city, that would not be allowed. So that's not even counting the ones where maybe it's just an individual owner operator.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, so you said the county allows for 1, maybe 2. Was I correct on that, Stephanie?
They currently allow 1.
Okay, so if there are businesses out there that aren't even following the county rules and regulations, I mean, wouldn't that be a problem still? Like, I mean, I guess I'm trying to hold back what I'm saying is just like, okay, these are the rules and regulations. They know that. And they're still not even following the county regulations. Like, then the county and the city would be stepping in, correct?
Correct, yeah. They would be, if annexed, they would be immediately in violation of the city code as well.
But they're
Right, and
already,
then-
some of them are already in violation of the county code.
Correct.
I feel like also if you're going to consider grandfathering somehow as you annex, then only those who were already in compliance should be eligible for that.
I think I would agree to that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to propose, we're not going to solve this question tonight, but I thank you, Councilor
Yeah.
Rockwell and Planning Commission members, because this is valuable input and it will help staff with maybe some policy language, working with the consultant team. So very much appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. We have a couple other questions here posed, and I'm curious if anyone has some thoughts on them. Starting with the second is around water service. So a question for you, do you see any value in providing water service outside of city limits, even if there is not any full annexation or urban infrastructure in place, primarily for public health reasons?
Yes.
So the city council did have a executive session recently, and
Oh, right, yeah.
I think the outcome of that was that they would be looking for annexation with delivery of any service. And obviously, either Councilor Pettigrew or Councilor Rockwell can confirm that.
I wasn't present at the meeting. I just got information relayed to me afterwards. But that is what I was told came from the meeting.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. And then this larger one might need a little bit more, Carla. Oh, yes, Councilor Pettigrew.
I just was going to say that, yes, that's what we decided as a board, that we would, if you were going to receive city services, you needed to be annexed into the community. So.
Correct.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
For tax purposes, is that how that?
I think it's just so.
I could say water, but.
Right, but I mean that being annexed, is that because of the?
I think there's a couple of things that go along with that. It's the perception of fairness, I think, between,
Okay.
the party that's outside, they may be paying a higher rate, but they're not paying the balance of the city taxes and what other city services kind of come hand in hand with. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Carla, we'll need to tunnel about the direction of that last discussion on this water question.
Yep.
Great. And then lastly, question about whether you feel the city is on the right track in terms of this UGB management and the move to designate urban reserves. And I don't know, Carla, if you want to describe that a little bit further for those that might be a bit more unfamiliar with that.
Sure, will do. So kind of the conversation I've been having with myself, and to some degree with Brandon and others here inside City Hall, is the need to, because of the rapid growth that has happened and that we at this point really don't see a clear end in sight to, that we need to be thinking not only beyond our city limits, but into our UGB and probably even beyond that. Even if we're not, our EOA clearly indicates that we have a need for additional employment lands. We don't have an outcome yet from the HCA, the housing capacity analysis. It may not show that we're eligible yet for a residential urban growth boundaries expansion, but I think within the planning horizon, which tends to be 20 years, we're going to get there sooner rather than later. I think there are two stages to this, and the first one is the UGB management. Currently, we don't manage our UGB. Our joint management agreement with the county has them responsible for our UGB. And I think we should have a conversation internal and then extend that conversation to the county about the city over a period of time taking on responsibility for managing the urban growth boundary. That means those West Glen questions for the portion of West Glen that's in the city, within the city's UGB, would no longer be a county decision. It would become a city decision. So that's the UGB management part of that. The urban reserve part of that, and actually Jamin, who's one of the consultant teams, probably more knowledgeable than I am on urban reserves. Urban reserves has really been a tool that has been afforded to the communities in metro or in larger, kind of denser areas. And it's really about looking beyond your 5, 10, even your 20-year horizon to maybe your 40 or 50-year horizon and saying, where's the right place to go? And they also have a companion to that called rural reserves. Where might we go to, which is your urban reserve, and where are we going to say we're not going to go to, and that's more of your rural reserve. And it's interesting because you look back in Boardman's history to where the Carty coal-fire plant was. There was a point in time when the port was actually talking, this was pre-current nuclear energy policy in Oregon, when they were planning 2 or 3 coal-fire plants and 3 or 4 nuclear plants out there in and around the Carty Reservoir. There was also a point in time in the 60s when there's land in the county zone space age industrial because Oregon was in the space race. If we hadn't had a change in leadership at the congressional level, Cape Canaveral or the Kennedy Space Station could have just as easily been outside of Boardman, Oregon. If either of those scenarios had actually happened, Boardman wouldn't be a community of 5,000 people today. Boardman would be a community of 25 or 50,000 people today. And I think we can look at the data center growth that's been happening and have kind of that same, contemplate what that looks like. How far east and how far west do we grow? We can't grow north. And south, we can to a point. Crossing the canal has its first set of problems. We're not going to grow into the bombing range. So that really does drive our growth east and west. And when you contemplate attempting to urbanize land that has been suburbanized at 1 and 2 acre parcels, redevelopment to urban densities is difficult. Granted, Commissioner Taylor's comment about, West Glen parcels are an acre and maybe they'll always be an acre. That's not efficient inside of city limits. So how do we preserve land outside of the urban growth boundary? Where do we preserve it? How do we preserve it? And that's what the Urban Reserve Program does. So I guess this is Carla's way of saying, I've been thinking about how Boardman needs to continue to grow for the next, not just 20 years, but with a look beyond that. And the best way to make sure we can grow with urban densities is to find a mechanism to preserve that land at its current density and not allow additional development to happen in those areas. Love to hear thoughts on that.
This is Councilor Rockwell again. I have a question. So, just so I'm clear, you're saying that West Glen areas they're 1 and 2 acre parcels, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I know where I live, and I believe pretty much every house down Columbia Avenue are half acre parcels. And so, and some I think are even larger than that. Are we trying to avoid that happening elsewhere, or are we just saying we just prefer not to have that size because it's not efficient or whatever? I just want some clarification on that.
Yeah, I think that what we have inside the city limits, when we start talking about the cost of delivering public services, water, wastewater, streets, the larger the parcel, the more expensive that infrastructure is per development or per home or per parcel. So it's about finding that balance between what's reasonable and affordable and kind of where people are at and what they want. There is certainly a drive in today's market, not only from the developer, but also from the purchaser for smaller parcels, much smaller parcels in some cases, 3,500, 4,000 square feet. That's very different than our current minimum of 8,000, or what we see in some of the neighborhoods with parcels that are even larger. So I think I think what urban reserves is really attempting to do is to just say, if it's currently a 5-acre parcel, we're going to ask you to keep it a 5-acre parcel, so that when it does come into the urban growth boundary and eventually be annexed, we can then make decisions about what kind of density should happen. Now, that density may be a neighborhood or a mix of neighborhoods that have, townhomes on 3,500 acre parcels, along with single family dwellings on 5,000 acres, or not 5,000 acres, 5,000 square feet, or something larger. Maybe some multifamily mixed in, or other types of dwelling opportunities. But if it's already been parcelized, such as West Glen has been parcelized, it's hard to come in and talk about redevelopment to city densities. City density is often considered to be 5 to 6 homes on an acre. So when you look at West Glen, if there are 70 parcels and they're each about an acre, if you're to look at city, now you'd have to add streets, you'd probably only get between 4 and 5 acres per each of those parcels. But that means you could see density that would be 4 to 5 times greater than what it currently is. And that will be difficult for a West Glen because it's so established. That's what we're trying to preserve with reaching out with urban reserves, is to make sure that we don't end up with a situation where we end up trying to figure out how to deliver expensive infrastructure to parcels that are oversized when it's not cost effective. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yep, that's what I was kind of thinking, but you explained it way better than I would have. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I skipped back to the land use map, but I think we're good there. Councillor Pettigrew, your hand is still raised. I'm not sure if that was a carryover from your previous comment or a new one.
No, it's a new one.
Okay.
I think that part of like where Richard lives now and stuff, the reason those lots were so big is because they were anticipating an alley. And, like the ones like off of Boardman Avenue, they're deep also. And, when you look into purchasing one of those, they tell you that, yes, you can plant a garden all the way to the neighbor's fence, but that they have a utility right away through there, and that it's not your property.
Thank you.
I don't know where all that works and how that came about, but I just know once I looked at a house on Boardman Avenue, and that's what they told me. So
yeah,
anyway.
I do think there is some easements in there that we recently kind of dug a little bit, went and found the old subdivision plats to get a better understanding of what those easements are. There are easements in there. I don't think we discovered that there are any alleys that have ever been platted in there, but there are easements. There are a variety of utility easements in there.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Continue.
Excellent. I think that concludes this first portion of the meeting. Thank you for the rich discussion. This was quite helpful. Carla, kind of next steps, and I'll recap this actually towards the end as well. But the draft you see before you will have some additional revisions, and we'll hopefully come back to in October to kind of share with you the final draft comp plan and layout that also has some of those revisions that we talked about today. So we'll have a new future land use map. We'll think about what that designation is for West Glen. We'll reflect the water service conversation that I know recently happened with council as well in those new policies. And it should be in a good place. With that, I am going to stop sharing. We're going to switch screens here for a moment because I'm going to have Jamin come and kind of introduce this next part of the work session, which is focused on zoning map and development code. So this is the kind of the implementation legs of the comprehensive plan. This is how we see it work on the ground.
Okay. Hi, good evening, counselors and commissioners. My name is Jamin Kimmel, and I'm a partner with Cascadia Partners and am overseeing the development code update portion of this project. The first thing, just as a big picture comment and a commendation I want to make to the city is that updating your development code at the same time as your comp plan like this is a big undertaking, and Carla has been excellent in sort of guiding us through this project. But it represents a really unique opportunity, and that is to make sure that your zoning and development regulations are really aligned with the goals and policies of the comp plan. That's what we're intending to do here. And the zoning and development regulations are really your one of your main tools for implementing the vision and the goals and the policies of the comp plan. And so what we're going to cover today is we've developed an initial zoning map and some initial concepts for permitted uses and housing types across each of the zoning districts. And so I'm going to give you an overview of the zoning designations and then provide a little bit more information about what our recommended permitted uses in each zoning district is and some key development standards. And then we have a few questions for you that we'd like some input on to help us make sure we're on the right track with this development code update. So again, the comp plan provides that broad policy direction, but the code is really the main set of requirements that applies to every development application. You will have some development applications that have to show that they are consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan. Mainly those are things like zoning map changes or zoning text changes, other kinds of more significant changes like that. But your day-to-day, most subdivisions, multifamily developments, commercial developments, your tool for making sure that they're consistent with the direction you want to head in the comp plan is the development code. So I want to help you understand how the comprehensive plan map relates to the zoning map. They are similar, but there are some slight differences. And so the comprehensive plan map designates more broad direction for the character and uses and intensity of development in different districts across the city. And so Ani has presented to you the draft comprehensive plan map, and that's shown on the left here. You can see there's 6 different designations in the comprehensive plan map. Zoning, though, we'd like to get a little bit more specific because even within some of those comp plan designations, there are some more nuances about how individual development should be regulated and what the goals are for a particular area. And so that's what the zoning map does. Really pins down that vision and applies more specific regulations to each parcel. One other thing it does is that right now you only have one map. You have a zoning map, and that sort of functions as your comprehensive plan map. The benefit of having a zoning map and a comprehensive plan map is that it provides some flexibility that if one of these zoning map designations isn't quite right for a specific property, makes it a little bit easier for that to be rezoned to another designation. And how that happens is that each of those comprehensive plan designations has a set of zone districts that are intended to implement that designation. And so there's a relationship there that if a property is currently zoned in one zone, but it wants to rezone to another zone, as long as that zone also implements the comprehensive plan, there is a sort of lower barrier to doing that rezone. And so, as you can see here, those six comprehensive plan designations, and those implement the various zoning map designations that you'll see here. So there's a little more detail in the different kinds of zoning districts. What we're trying to do there is get a bit more specific about what permitted uses and development standards, densities are appropriate in each part of Boardman. So then you go out down another level of detail. Each of those zones then has some specific regulations in it. And the most important of those I'll point out is the set of permitted uses. So you have that today in your zoning districts. And that says which uses are permitted, which are prohibited, which uses may need to have a conditional use permit. And so that's also embedded in the zoning districts. And then it's the development standards. And these are the key standards that really control the sort of intensity and the form and the scale and the character of development in that district. And so those are things like maximum heights, minimum setbacks, maximum lot coverage and density. In some cases, there'll be some use or zone specific design standards that go a step further than the development standards and may regulate certain elements of architectural design or site design. So at the beginning of this process, we audited your current development code to try to identify what current code regulations may need to be updated. And there are a few things we were looking for. First, things that would align with the vision and what were the expected goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So we look at those code standards and think, is this really still consistent with where the city wants to head in terms of regulating development? And then opportunities to simply just streamline and simplify the development code. So as development codes over time, they tend to get sort of Frankensteined. A lot of things get added in there. They get confusing and redundant. So there are ways to streamline and simplify just to make it easier to use for staff and for your applicants. And then there's quite a few amendments that are needed for compliance with a set of housing-related statutes. And so, as you may know, the state legislature has been busy in recent years passing laws related to how cities regulate housing. And there are many different regulations in the current Boardman Development Code that were in conflict with some of those statutes. So we audited for all those and took an inventory of those issues. So we kind of developed a work plan for how we'd address the code updates. And now we're moving into the phase to implement that work plan and create a revised development code. So some key things that came out of that review of the development code and considering the direction of the comp plan, there's a goal to simplify and streamline the number of zoning districts. There was a lot of zoning districts and sub-districts, and it probably was unnecessarily complex. Another key thing was to expand the allowed housing types in residential districts. So we heard a lot through the process of the housing capacity analysis and other community engagement that people and developers want opportunities to build a wider range of housing types, and particularly housing types that could be lower cost or more affordable. Another imperative was to look at opportunities to allow for what we would call neighborhood scale commercial in some residential districts. So allowing that, a small business or a storefront to open up in some places within residential districts to allow that opportunity for people to walk to their daily needs. And then again, broadly more to update development and design standards to implement the vision of the comprehensive plan. So this is your current zoning districts. Today, as I mentioned, there are a few different residential districts and commercial districts, and there's sub-districts within those. And what we found in looking at that is some of the distinctions between those sub-districts were probably unnecessary at this stage. And in some cases, it would be, the zoning code would be simpler and easier to use if we were to simplify and streamline the number of districts. So this is the new proposed zoning map. And what this does is streamlines it down to 10 base zone districts. There are 3 residential districts, 3 commercial districts, 2 industrial districts, and 2 parks and public facilities zone districts. And across each of those, there's variations in the permitted uses and standards. What I'm going to do now is I'll go through the residential districts and give you an overview of our proposed permitted uses and development standards, and we'll pause there for some questions and discussion. I think that's where there's more significant change in the permitted uses and development standards. So there are 3 different residential zones. They're titled neighborhood residential, compact residential, and village residential. So those replace the different sub-districts. They're just now zoning districts. There's no base district and sub-district. The intent was to concentrate those higher intensity residential uses. So you think of things like apartments and condos and townhomes in the compact residential and village residential zones. And those generally align with properties that are currently zoned in the multifamily or manufactured home park sub-district. But there are some places where we recommended to applying the compact residential or village residential zones to allow some higher densities of housing in those locations. So here's a graphic to sort of give you a sense of the spectrum of the housing types that would be permitted and densities in the 3 different residential zone districts. So on the less dense side of the spectrum would be neighborhood residential, where permitted uses would be a lower intensity, things like single-family homes with accessory dwelling units, duplexes, manufactured homes, things like that of that scale. And then in the compact residential district, we'll start to scale up to allow some higher densities and some forms of housing that can be more affordable to a wider spectrum of residents. So things like what we would call middle housing, which is things in between single family homes and apartments, duplex, triplex, quadplex, townhomes, uses like that. And in the village residential, it would encourage and allow for some higher density housing uses like townhomes and multifamily. So here are the specific permitted housing types as they vary across the zones. As you can see, one thing that we're recommending is in the neighborhood residential zone, which applies most broadly, to allow some of those middle housing types in those zones. Those would be things like duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes. Those would provide for a wider variety of housing options for new development in that area, in those areas. Now, that would be distinguished from the compact residential zone by the development standards that apply. So they wouldn't be allowed as intensely or on as small of lots as they would in the compact residential district. In compact residential district, then it would allow a slightly wider variety of housing types, and specifically allowing for townhomes and larger projects, so more than just 4 units attached. And then village residential is really the zone that's intended for the widest variety and the highest density of housing types. So these are some of the development standards. Don't want to go through all these in detail, but there's a few I want to point out. You're probably familiar with minimum lot size, setbacks, and maximum height. Those are standards that are in your zoning district or your development code today. 2 additional standards that we're recommending that we want to get some input from you today are minimum density and floor area ratio. So minimum density is sets the minimum number of units that must be built on a given area of land. So if there's a subdivision that's proposed, then they not only need to stay within a maximum density, which is sort of set by the minimum lot size, constrained by that, but also to meet a minimum number of units. And the intent there is to make sure that your residential land is used efficiently. And so in a zone that's intended to have for a higher density, the goal is to make sure that it's not used for lower density residential uses. So that's the intent behind a minimum density standard. And then a floor area ratio. So when you allow for more units on a lot, one of the things that can happen is that the size of those structures tend to get bigger, and they may be out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood, which predominantly in Boardman would be a lot of single family homes. So one tool to control the scale of the structure while still allowing more units is the floor area ratio. And that caps the area of the structure of the building relative to the area of the lot. So it's the ratio between the floor area on the site and the site area of the lot. So it's a tool a lot of cities are turning to now because they want to allow a wider variety of housing types, but they also want to make sure that it's compatible with what's developed in the surrounding neighborhoods. So these are some of those key development standards we're proposing and how they vary across each of the zones. So a minimum density ranging from 4 to 12 units per acre across each of the zones. Minimum lot sizes starting at 5,000 square feet in neighborhood residential, going down to 3,500 square feet in compact residential and village residential. Now, those are also minimum lot sizes. So if developer wanted to build larger lots, they would be permitted, but they would have to build enough units to meet that minimum density standard. A maximum floor area ratio of 0.7. It's kind of hard to visualize, but generally those are set at a level where the structure wouldn't be too big on the lot and would be compatible with a larger single family home.
Can I ask a
Maximum
question
height,
about
there's
that?
no, oh, sure. Yeah, we can pause.
When you
Go ahead.
say floor area, do you mean
Mhm.
footprint or square footage? Like,
It's the
because
square footage.
it's a square footage, so even if it's like
Mhm.
2 stories, that's gonna limit the footprint of the house even more. You see what I'm saying?
It doesn't regulate the footprint at all. It does regulate the
Oh,
total floor area. So you could have
okay. That's what I was
so
confused about.
so for example, if you had a 5,000 square foot minimum lot size, see if I can do the math, a 0.7 I think then would be allow you for up to 3,500 square feet of square
Okay.
footage.
Okay.
And you can have all that on the first level if you wanted a single level home or a 2-story home that divides up that 3,500 square feet across the 2 stories.
Okay. Thanks.
Maximum height, we're recommending keeping the same general residential standard, which generally allows for 2.5 to maybe 3 stories in the neighborhood residential and compact residential. But recommending a higher limit in the village residential, which would allow for up to 4-story buildings, which would be common for some modern multifamily developments of 4 stories. Okay, so I covered this already. I'll go over it quickly, but these are the new standards recommended again is that minimum density and that maximum FAR. Again, the goal of minimum density is to ensure that efficient use of land, concentrate higher density near services and amenities within the city limits. And then the maximum floor area ratio, again, allow multiple units in a building, but encourage that building to be compatible with generally with single family homes. The other sort of side effect of a maximum floor area ratio is that it can encourage smaller units, and smaller units can tend to be more affordable. So if you're capped on the floor area, but you want to add more units, those units are going to need to be smaller. This is something that a lot of cities around the state have seen start to be successful in encouraging some smaller homes that can be better for like starter homes, entry-level homes that people can are more likely to be able to afford. Okay, a couple of questions here. Also open to there's a lot of content there, so open to your clarification questions. So interested in your thoughts on adopting a minimum density and a maximum FAR. We think these are sort of consistent with the direction you're headed with the comprehensive plan and your housing goals, but they do present some new standard that all development has to meet. Do you support reducing the minimum lot size to facilitate production of more housing and more attainable housing? So the current minimum lot size in the residential districts is 8,000 square feet. We're recommending reducing that to 5,000 square feet or 3,500 square feet, depending on the zone. And then should limited neighborhood serving commercial uses be permitted in the village residential zone? And what that looks like would be things like a coffee shop, a small restaurant, maybe some form of a convenience store or a market that would be allowed to be mixed in the village residential, which is the highest density residential zone.
This is Counselor Rockwell. I have a question. So,
Sure.
If we approved lowering the minimum square footage for lot size, would that be for all available lots in Boardman, or would we be able to regulate how often that could happen? Because I could see definitely somebody coming in, buying up a bunch of land, totally taking advantage of this, and then we end up with just nothing but 5,000 square foot or less homes or whatever. And I don't know if that would be uh, a good deal either. Does that make sense? And so would we be able to regulate like, okay, yeah, we can do this here, but we're not going to do this here?
Yeah, the best way to do that directly would be through the zoning map. And so I'll jump back to that. And so I guess the question would be, in the neighborhood residential or compact, so neighborhood residential is recommended for 5,000 square feet, compact and village is 3,500 square feet. If there are areas of town where you think that's not appropriate or that you would like to reserve for lower densities, which would mean a higher minimum lot size, then the tool to do that would be to adopt another zone and apply that to certain properties. One thing we could do. Another thing you could do is to establish an overall maximum density. And so even though you may be able to build small lots on a certain portion of the site, maybe on another portion of the site, you have to build some larger lots, then it'll kind of net out to a maximum density that is lower than what you could achieve if you only built at the minimum lot size.
Okay, so we do have a little bit more control over what can be done on each lot size. Like it doesn't have to be this or that. Like it doesn't have to be black and white. Like there is some gray area here. We could add some different rules for each lot if we needed to.
Well, not for each lot. I think if there are
I
certain
guess not each lot, but
properties,
each
Yeah.
get. I guess what I'm getting at is like some areas we could have some leeway. Some areas we could be like, okay, I think we're okay with this. Others is like, okay, this would make more sense if we had mixed residential, and so on and so forth. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Sure. I think you have leeway in setting the rules in your zoning code. There's just a few statutes that you need to meet. On a site-by-site basis, as development application is proposed, you have a little less leeway because there is a state requirement that you have clear and objective standards for all housing development. And so in the code, there does need to be, for example, if you were concerned about projects only being built at the minimum lot size, then the best way to address that would be to rezone certain properties and have a higher minimum lot size, or to apply a maximum density standard in that zone. So I guess leeway in setting the rules, but not as much leeway on a site-by-site basis or a development-by-development basis.
Okay, that's good to know. I just don't want a scenario like we had outside of town or whatever, where somebody said they were going to do one thing and they did another, and it was a cluster, and so I would hate for that to happen again.
But the minimum maximum lot sizes for each zone can overlap a little bit, right?
So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can, if you're in our zone, for example, the minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. If you wanted to build in that zone 7,500 square feet lots, you could, and you could still meet the minimum density. Similar in compact residential. But that's where it's important that we set the minimum density at something we think is right, that it provides enough flexibility to either do lower density or higher density.
Okay.
I'm going to go back to our questions here. I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts on the maximum floor area ratio. I know that's a little bit different concept. It's a new kind of standard you don't have today. Any thoughts or questions on what role that would play or how that would work?
Is that something that we don't have that now?
Correct.
You
We
don't
have
know.
a FAR.
Yeah. So the amount of floor area on a site then would be really just constrained by the maximum height and the setbacks, which can allow for a really large building, really, if you don't have any other additional control on that.
I do think it helps maintain character when you have those kind of ratios, because it can be jarring, when you're driving down a nice neighborhood and they all have nice lawns, and then there's one house that just takes the entire lot. I think it's a good idea to set that for that reason.
And that kind of thing is more likely to happen if you allow for a triplex or a duplex or a quadplex mixed in with single family homes, because then you have multiple units. If every unit is 2,000 square feet, that's going to be a pretty large structure. It's going to be out of scale. So it's really the intent is to allow those more units, but make sure the scale is compatible.
But then that's why you limit it, like you said, where the townhouses have to be less than 4 on the neighborhood one, and then they can be more than 4, or they have to be more than 4 on the next. I see what you're trying to do here.
And the final question there about that limited neighborhood serving in the village residential is consistent with really poorly written standards in our current code that allow some of those neighborhood commercial zones in that multifamily subdistrict. So while we're going to write it better, it's really not a change significantly from what is already allowed. It's just really confusing the way it is currently written.
And that creates where you can have mixed use.
A little, yeah,
Down
the house could become a coffee shop or the
Yeah.
little neighborhood bookstore or ice cream shop or whatever.
Or
yeah.
like it's a apartments on top and somewhere underneath. Can you do
So
that?
that mixed use is more, that kind of mixed use is more of a downtown option.
Okay.
Where you would have your commercial on the main floor, and then residential on the second and third, or maybe front-facing street retail with offices on a second floor and residential on a third floor. That's more of a downtown, more dense kind of application. Not that a neighborhood commercial in a village residential couldn't have a home or residential use associated with it, but it's more about allowing a full form commercial activity that would be neighborhood serving in that neighborhood area. And again, our current code allows for that, but it's not well written. It's if somebody were to come in and ask to do it, I'd be great. Let's figure out how it would work, because I'm not just real sure. So, yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the residential zones? Generally, I'll move on to the commercial and industrial if not. Okay. Okay, so for commercial zones, there's also 3 different flavors here, 3 different districts. These replace what were probably 5 different sub-districts of commercial zones today. So we're simplifying this some from your current zoning map. One of the more significant changes is to designate the area around City Hall and sort of the city center of town as downtown mixed use. So that's that darker red you're seeing on the map there. And so that zone today is more of just a general commercial zone. And through our public engagement and discussions with the PAC over the course of this process, that there was this desire for some place that is, really is the heart of Boardman, right? It is your downtown. And in that area, the desire was for a more pedestrian-oriented commercial district, so a more traditional downtown. And so that is the vision for establishing the downtown mixed-use zone. And I'll talk a little bit about how the uses and standards vary there from the other commercial zones. And then there are 2 other commercial districts, the community commercial and regional commercial. Community commercial is a pretty general commercial zone, allows pretty wide variety of commercial uses, similar today to what you, I think, call either commercial or your tourist center sub-district. And then the regional commercial zone allows even a broader range of commercial uses, and that's really intended for the area around the interchange at the port, which is not necessarily as intended to serve the nearby residents, but really to serve more regional commercial and employment needs. So here's how the permitted uses vary across those zones. And so you can think of these on a spectrum. Regional commercial is the most permissive, allows a wide variety of retail, restaurants, hotel, motel, offices, etc. And then also some uses that would have, if they were adjacent to residential, more impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So vehicle repair, vehicle sales and storage, these tend to be sort of higher traffic, a lot of potential impacts on residents, medical and dental offices, outdoor storage and sales. So the actual storing merchandise outside the business, and then drive-through facilities. And then in the community commercial, the intent is to have a wide variety, again, of commercial uses permitted, but pare that down a little bit to take out some of those uses that will have a higher impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So vehicle repair, vehicle sales and storage, those kinds of things, while still allowing, for example, drive-through facilities, quick vehicle servicing, which is really like your Jiffy Lubes and things like that. Lastly, in downtown mixed use, the intent there is to allow for a wide variety of commercial uses, but to not allow for those more automobile-oriented uses. And so those can really conflict with creating a more friendly pedestrian environment. And there's a place for those auto-oriented uses in the other commercial districts. So in that place where you're wanting to create a more pedestrian-friendly downtown, the intent then would be to not allow for some of those auto-oriented uses like vehicle repair, vehicle sales, quick vehicle servicing, and drive-through facilities. So the downtown would really be more oriented to people coming, parking in one place, and being able to walk around and visit multiple businesses. Again, so those auto-oriented uses in the regional commercial will be focusing more on the Port-o-Morrow interchange that replaces some existing districts. No real changes here to some of the key development standards like the maximum height or lot coverage. There is one other change we're suggesting is that to allow for some higher density residential uses conditionally and by right instead of conditionally in those. And that's one question we had for you is in what zones might that be appropriate, and where do you want to allow for that high density residential to provide more opportunities for that housing development? Another change is proposing a 20-foot maximum setback and some use-specific standards for drive-throughs. And so the intent behind there is, even though this is a more auto-oriented place, we still want the development and the building to come up in front to the street and present a nice facade to the street and not have a sort of sea of parking in the street. And so that's what that maximum building setback helps to achieve. So for the community commercial district, and I mentioned that replaces the existing commercial district, not many changes to maximum height or lot coverage. I mentioned that it permits some auto-oriented uses, but less than the regional commercial. Also would permit some of those higher density residential uses and have that same maximum setback and some design standards for drive-throughs. Also proposing some improved landscaping requirements just to make sure that those are attractive site designs. And then we get to the downtown mixed use. So there is a district in your code today called the City Center Subdistrict. It's not actually applied to any properties, but that was the intent when it was written, was to be applied to somewhere around this area. And so part of the comp plan here would be adopting a zoning map that actually implements that idea of having a downtown Boardman. So it maintains that existing prohibition on auto-oriented uses, which is part of the City Center Subdistrict, but again is not mapped today. Has some additional design standards that are related to making sure the buildings are pedestrian friendly. It includes things like a maximum setback, a requirement to provide some pedestrian amenities, and then it has a little bit higher maximum height of up to 50 feet. And the intent there would be to allow for something like a vertical mixed use building that you were referring to there. So having apartments or condos above a storefront. That 50 feet would allow for a 4-story building. One other change recommending here is to permit standalone residential. So a housing project does not necessarily have to be part of a mixed use project. It could be, but it's not required to be. Okay, so I guess let's take these through one at a time here. And so first is those proposed permitted uses in the commercial zones. Do you think they meet the objective of really differentiating those three distinct commercial characters, those commercial centers in the community?
The only thing I guess I think is like once you get out to the further, which way am I? The further out of town, it seems interesting to me to think about housing out there. That
Mhm.
doesn't like jive really to me.
The regional commercial one. the one at
Yeah.
the Port of Morrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems. I wouldn't want to live out there, personally. No
Yeah,
thanks. A
it
little
does
noisy.
present some complications because the regional commercial district would allow for some of those uses that may conflict with residential, like we were mentioning, auto repair and auto sales, and I think it even allows some light industrial uses. So, it would be very flexible in terms of allowing housing, where the sites are available and the market demands it, but it also has that, potential to create some conflicts.
I guess somebody has to want to build a house there. I know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we're not
Doesn't
sure
mean
if there would
is
be a
going to be
market, but
house. There
Well,
are
I
a couple
think,
houses out there, actually.
well, I think at one time there were some houses out there.
There are, yeah.
The
No,
Glens home.
they were, there
Yeah.
were,
Glens are the only
Plans.
there,
Okay, that's the only one.
yeah.
There's also a home at the storages.
Well,
Oh, okay.
yes, there is a home there, but I think even further out, there were homes there originally, and then they sold the property, and then
Yeah.
I think where the new substation is, that was a home,
Mm.
and then they sold. And so there was another one, I think even before that, by where Tillamook was, and they sold too. So there have been homes out there. It's just been a long time since you've seen any there.
Right.
Yeah, we recently had somebody who came in as a developer and it's not currently allowed. The only home type currently allowed in that zone is a caretaker facility. And somebody came in and wanted to have a conversation about homes, and I was kind of like, yeah, it's pretty industrial in nature. And so we kind of didn't let that conversation go very far.
Yeah.
So it is a question worth asking, and the home types are more of the multifamily, not single family, but more multifamily.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a compatibility option, but it's would be limited. I mean,
I could see
that's
maybe
something we
apartments
regularly see.
or townhouses or something like that, but not like what we had already happen, where we just got these boxes out there and we just shoved as many people as we
Yeah.
could in there. Like, I wouldn't be okay with that, and I'm sure most people wouldn't either.
I suppose I could see like employee housing, that kind of thing. But that's directly related to whatever businesses are there, but.
Right. And again, what's currently allowed is a caretaker residence,
Yeah.
one per kind of business.
Yeah.
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 It just doesn't make a lot of sense though. There's just too much conflict that could come from possible. And you need that industrial Boardman. That's more important to the industrial area. More important.
Mhm. Yeah, we can talk this over a little more with Carla, but it is one of the things we were less sure about and why we brought it up. One thing is if you make housing a prohibited use, that area, the comprehensive plan designation, would still retain the option for one of those properties or a portion of that property to be rezoned into something like community commercial, which maybe then in community commercial housing is permitted, but you would have some leeway and discretion to approve or deny that sort of on a site-by-site basis, which you wouldn't have if you just made it a permitted use.
Right.
Okay, so maybe ask the same question of the community commercial district here. These are some places that are adjacent to residential, where the idea was to provide some flexibility if there's a market for housing in these places and there's a need for it, that would be allowed for some higher density housing specifically. And the reason behind permitting just the higher density housing types is there is limited commercial land, and you don't want that land to be all consumed by housing. And so you're by allowing higher density, you're saying, okay, well, you can build some higher density, use that land efficiently, so that it doesn't be more quickly eaten up if there were some lower density subdivisions built on that land.
Are y'all still there?
Yeah.
Okay, we seem to have lost our screen here in the room, so we'll try to figure that out.
Yeah, I can see your
Aureli's
screen.
probably over there playing games on the other screen.
Yeah, I can see the screen still.
So we just can't see them. So
On the big TVs.
Okay, so we've lost the big screen, but you guys still have it on the small screen? Okay. Okay. So there are a couple of us in the room then that are going to be limited to what we can see until we can figure this out.
Antenna cable, something about an antenna cable. Did you see that? That's what it popped up.
But let's go ahead and, I think, I would think that there would be some ability to allow those larger density in that community resident or community commercial by right.
There you go.
Oh, you're back. Okay.
My problem is when you start allowing that, you're starting to take away
your commercial opportunity. You are.
I think when you look 20 years down the road, are we gonna grow that much? Who knows? But if you allow that, especially since there's more area to go than just.
So maybe we should make sure there's enough residential land that allows that more dense development. I mean, when you think about what has been approved in Boardman over the past, let's say 10 years, we've seen 3 new large multifamily projects. Portview, followed by Tidewater, the apartment complex portion of Tidewater, and now the Wilson Lane project. That's 750 homes, in a large multifamily complex. So maybe we need to just make sure there's enough residential land that allows that type of development so that we're not seeing encroachment on commercial land. Is that kind of what you're saying, Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, you look, and if for some reason things just blow up, where's
We need more
the
services.
rest of this main street business gonna go?
Yeah,
Right.
because
I mean, we
that
got
looks
this
very
area.
limited.
That's some over here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But where's it gonna go?
Right.
Looking at that map, that
Yeah.
looks very limited.
Yeah.
To me.
So I guess I'm not, that's a city thing, but to me, it's like, you really wanna be able to start putting high density in your.
Mhm. Yeah, a couple of thoughts for follow-ups here, hearing some of these concerns. So one thing is that Carla mentioned housing capacity analysis is still ongoing, and we're looking to get some information from that. And that can help to tell us is if we've zoned enough for that higher density housing. And if it looks more tight than we expect it might be, then that would lend support to the idea that the commercial zones maybe should be more restrictive of of housing. Another thing is that part of the advantage again of having your comp plan map and your zoning map be separate is that we could indicate that the higher density residential zone, village residential, could be one zone that could implement your community commercial designation. And what that just means is that if one of these properties wanted to build residential, then similarly, they would then need to apply for a rezone, and then you'd have some discretion on, is this the right property? Is this the right place? And to, approve or deny that on a side-by-side basis. And so that may be a better approach if there's some uncertainty about whether or not there's enough commercial land, and we want to make sure to preserve that commercial land for commercial uses.
Yeah, my only addition to this or comment to this is that the property that is basically adjacent to the cemetery, so the cemetery district owned property, I want to make sure we have a mixed use opportunity for that. Yep, your cursor's in a pretty close, yep, right there. To allow that as an opportunity. There's a nice view there. If you were to have a 2 or 3 or 4-story building there, that could look to the north. You could have a nice commercial opportunity on the bottom with some nice view property on the top.
Mhm. Yeah, and one thing too you could do is to allow for the mixed use development, even though you wouldn't allow for standalone or single use housing.
Mhm.
And so you could continue to allow that. So, in that way, you're getting the housing,
That
but you're
makes
also
more sense.
getting some commercial space.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. Okay. I think from what I'm hearing, I think we're probably headed in a similar direction than for the downtown mixed use district. Is that with the concerns around making sure there's enough space for commercial uses, and especially in a place where you want to create a concentration of some shops and storefronts and as a destination, then it would be consistent with that to also limit housing to a mixed use development in the downtown mixed use district. Right now we have it permitted as a standalone residential.
Yeah, we have an ownership issue here. So the largest parcel there is owned by the Good Shepherd Healthcare organization out of Hermiston. And we know about a third of that large parcel will eventually someday be a medical complex. So going back to your use table, we need to make sure that medical and dental facilities are allowed in this particular zone. They weren't on the list for downtown. And then we do know that their business model is to develop housing. So I think we do need to have some ability to permit standalone housing in here as so yeah, your changes permit standalone residential housing no longer required to be part of a mixed use project. So I do know that they're going to want to have some housing associated with their development. Now, can we work with them for property swaps and other things with other parcels elsewhere? Maybe. But in the current downtown plan, that 60-acre parcel that they purchased does allow for single family and kind of that less dense multifamily on the fringes of that piece of property. So I'm just trying to think through the ownership and the current downtown development plan. So.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, we can work through some of those details. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of support for the owner of that property to develop. So I don't want to create a mechanism that's kind of contrary to where they're thinking.
Want to hamstring it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I think we got to the second question here. In the interest of time, I think I will skip the last two questions because we're going to be coming back to you with the specific language for the development code, and you'll be able to take a closer look at that. But what I'm going to highlight here is when you see that, we're going to be recommending some new things like design standards for drive-throughs to make them a little bit more attractive and pedestrian friendly, and then that maximum front setback. And we can explain a little bit more what the intent behind that is and how that would work. So I'm going to keep us moving into the industrial zones. This is the last set of zones. And so there's two different zone districts here. The priorities here permit a range of industrial uses. And there's really no major changes here to the zone districts. We're just sort of folding it into the new structure, making some minor amendments to some development standards, cleaning up some of the definitions of uses to make sure that's very clear. And so the two different uses or zones are employment and industrial. And the employment zone, it really emphasizes lighter industrial uses. So this is the one we're anticipating would be more likely to be adjacent to some residential or commercial districts. And so important not to allow those heavier industrial uses. It does replace the current light industrial subdistrict, but allows for a range of in light industrial, light manufacturing, commercial, and other types of employment or office uses. And then the industrial zone replaces the existing general industrial zone And then there is another district in the current code that's the Port Industrial District, which really is was never mapped to any properties and is unnecessary now. And so we're simplifying it down to one industrial zone district. Again, this line is important for economic development, and all of those properties are currently zoned for industrial uses. So really here, just some cleanups on the definitions of uses, help with interpreting the code, allow for a little bit higher lot coverage. That was an issue that Carla had noticed in some instances, and some improved landscaping requirements. So one question we had here, and I'll open other thoughts as you see those maps and the permitted uses. As we looked at when we developed the zone districts, we didn't have the zoning map final. And one thing as we've worked through with Carla and developing the zoning map is this employment zone. We found that it actually was, there was only one area where we had identified that made sense as a place to designate. And so it's becoming a zone that's really only mapped to one place today. And so the question is, would you support consolidating that zone with the regional commercial zone? There's very little difference between the two of them. And so that's something we could look at if the city wanted to support some further kind of streamlining of the number of zoning districts.
Just so everybody's, the regional commercial is what's being proposed at the port interchange.
Yeah, this right here. So it's a similar sort of situation with those properties there. They're adjacent to some industrial zones, but they're currently used for not just industrial, but sort of a wider variety of commercial uses. And so that property there could, that area could make sense to zone for that regional commercial, and would largely be a similar intent as what's there for the employment district.
Yeah, I would say put it together. Just
The biggest difference is current lot size. I mean, really, a lot of the uses they're not identical, but there is certainly some commonalities between them. I think the biggest difference is the lot size in the what's currently employment is just a smaller lot size, where the lot size is down at the port interchange. They're just larger lots. Some have divided into, are they getting smaller? That's really the only change. I think the intensity of uses are probably, and the variety of uses are probably similar.
That's such a small area to have an entire zone for it.
Yeah, that's the reason we bring it up. As we're developing the zones, we try to think about the whole menu you might need, but as we look more closely at it, sometimes it makes sense to further simplify. And so yeah, we can look at that a little bit more closely. I think there's always a benefit in making your code a little simpler. So we'll work through if there's any implications there we're not thinking of right now. Let's start to head in that direction. So with that, that's oh, go ahead.
The only thing I would comment on that, I know the area that we've identified as the regional commercial is much of it's currently zoned for rural service center or service center zoning. And that I think the code currently states something about it being oriented near I-84. And I think the only concern that I would have about them being similar is just making sure that some of those interstate allowances, particularly around like maybe freight or something like that, if that's not a designated freight route for the roadway, that would be the only thing that
Columbia is, though. Columbia is a freight route.
But Eldridge is not.
True.
So I think that's one thing we just might want to keep in mind.
And I don't know if the road base I don't know what kind of base it was built out when it was built. So, okay, something we can do a little investigating on and talk through. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I think I'll wrap us up.
I know that
code
When we built a
questions.
loop road, we
Go ahead.
built it for a truck, so yeah. Sorry,
Hmm.
take it away.
So that is that's all we have for the code questions as of now. Appreciate that input. And so I think Anais will wrap up with the next steps in general for the project. But just so you know, when we come back to you in your packet for the next meeting, you will see an actual draft of the new development code. A lot of things changed around from your existing code. And we're going to try to give you that enough time in advance to read it and really digest it. But that's the time when you'll be able to really see the detail in there. And yeah, look forward to your input on that. We'll come back in October. All right,
Great.
Anais, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. Sorry, actually, I made some edits to these slides. Do you mind maybe exiting and refreshing? Came in. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so next steps, upcoming milestones. So as you see, there's kind of two tracks happening. We've got the comp plan on one track and the development code on another track. We're going to spend the next couple of months revising and laying out the comp plan and the comp plan map. This should be ready to submit to DLCD through a PAPA notification system in October, excuse me. And that's about a 35-day review period. DLCD may come back and have some recommendations for Planning Commission and City Council consideration. So we suspect adoption hearings for that would begin at the end of this year. So likely in December, maybe November. It really depends on how the holidays shake out. For the development code, staff is going to have quite a bit to review over the coming months. As Jamin mentioned, we'll have kind of a second version of this meeting. It'll essentially be the last PAC meeting, but your kind of second work session on this in October. There, we're going to focus primarily on the draft code, but we'll also share a draft of the comp plan document in full layout. So hopefully it'll look a lot nicer than the Word documents you saw attached in your packet tonight. In addition, we are anticipating some additional work sessions, primarily led by Carla, that will focus on some compliance and cleanup issues for the development code. We suspect those will happen in October, November, and then presentation of the final development code will happen at another joint Planning Commission and City Council work session sometime in November that might stretch into December, depending on the holiday schedule. I will pause there. Any questions, comments, thoughts before we wrap up for the evening?
Speak now. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Or until October, you mean?
No, and you got the packet about a week ago. If you haven't had a chance to read through those comp plan pieces, the 4 chapters, Planning Commission, please, if you have a chance, read through them. If you see anything that raises a red flag, please reach out to me, and we can certainly talk through them. Again, I think Planning Commission, we had a nice discussion last month before. Hopefully you noticed that village character and civic center were things that came out of that conversation and are memorialized in the map and the zone section. So your input is important. You guys live here, it's your home, it's your community. This is your plan and it'll be your development code. So if you've got thoughts or concerns, and that would be the same for you, Councilors Rockwell and Pettigrew, if you see things that you've got questions about. Oh, and I see Karen's hand is up.
I just thought maybe somebody was challenging us, so I wanted to say thanks for all your hard work. And yes, that's my comment. Goodbye.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah. I guess the other thing is you can see there, it's going to get really busy over the next 6 months. So we're not letting up. And to that end, if NIEAST wants to stick around for just another couple of minutes, we do have some additional Planning Commission dates that we want to have conversation with the Planning Commission about. a change in September and then maybe a change in December, if not an additional meeting or two through the fall as we go. So, Anais, we're working on that. You can hang around and hear that, or you can sign off and I can email you later.
All right, I think I will choose the latter.
All right, I'll email you later.
All right, thank you all so much for your attention tonight. I know this is hard to do in a hybrid setup and via Zoom, but really appreciate everyone's input and thought and attention. So yeah, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to coming back to you in October.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just echo that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the comprehensive overview.
Excellent. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Okay, so Planning Commission, we still have a meeting to wrap up.
Okay, so
So we still have Sam and David. Perfect. Okay, so we still have our Planning Commission. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn it back to you.
now it says discussion items.
And you know what? I am no longer, so biggest thing, I am no longer the planning official.
What's your name right there?
So
says planning
the report that you will see
Uh-huh.
is from last month, actually. That was
Oh.
in front of the city councilors. So she didn't quite get completely off the hook yet, but
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do have the report in front of you that we provided to city council. So in updates, as we're all aware, Carla has transitioned to planning specialist for us, working on all of these projects. Relly promoted to planner 2, and then I promoted to the planning official. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. Carla's still going to be here. She's not just taking off. I don't think there's really anything outside of there to update. It did quiet down a little bit for us over the last month, which was really nice during this transition period. And when I say that, that doesn't mean we were sitting around doing nothing. We've still had plenty to do, but I feel like we had the opportunity to make some desk transitions and clear our desks off just enough so that way we can hit the ground running for the next projects.
I still have my second move to accomplish. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So since you're updating the project on Wilson.
Has been approved.
Okay.
Yep. No appeals.
The what?
The project on Wilson.
Oh, on Wilson.
From last month.
State kind of stepped in.
Yes. They yes.
Tried to step in.
All right, you
Yes, and they were corralled and stepped back out. It has been approved. Actually, I think there is I need to go look at the city council agenda because I think it's been the packet's been updated. They've asked for some tax, kind of a tax abatement option, which I think the city council will be discussing on Tuesday. But they are moving forward. I know we've issued address and
we've issued
access.
and address, and they're working through some of their preliminary conditions of approval. So yeah, it is moving forward.
Yep.
Some other projects that are also moving forward, as I understand, we do have as-built for Chaparral. The subdivision was 65 lots?
65 buildable, 66 lots, 65 buildable.
Yep. So we're waiting for that to kind of finish up, and then we will probably see that project moving forward very, very quickly. I know that the developer ProMade has been definitely chomping at the bit, waiting for that to happen so they can begin construction. A couple of other things that have happened over the last probably just 2 weeks. We do have a complete application for our August, 2 complete applications for August Planning Commission. So you guys will have stuff in front of you next month. And then going into September, we do already have a complete application for September. And so while we're on that, there is every year is the annual Oregon Association of Planners meeting. And it used to be in October, but they have bumped it back to September this year. And we, staff actually won't be here September 17th.
Oh, me either. I'll be in Arkansas.
So one of our requests was if we could push out that meeting, if anybody had any objections to moving just 1 week out to September 24th, still a Thursday evening at 6 p.m.
That sounds good to me because I like to be there. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm going to a wedding. So
yeah, so far we do have one complete application, and we have had a conversation with somebody who may give us another application, but we'll just have to see what happens. So October, I don't think we're looking at any changes. Same with November. However, in December, with
Right.
everything going on,
With everything going on in December, I'm just wondering, and again, we're looking at well, either doing 2 December, again, not knowing what's going to be coming for the just regular business. I don't want to suggest we would cancel the December 17th meeting. If there is no action, we would do that. But for a public hearing related to what we talked about tonight, my question is, would you be willing to hold that meeting a little earlier so we could get the city council potential hearing in January? So would you be open to either December 3rd or December 10th? Any big problems with either of those? We'll certainly make sure you're aware of it and we'll get it on your calendars. But I think back to when I was early at the county, some of you may have heard of that thing called a speedway that was proposed a number of years ago. The County Planning Commission at that point in time, there was about 6 months when they held 2 hearings a month. They held a hearing for regular business and they held a hearing for the speedway. So I guess I'm saying this, that if we look at I guess the question, the underlying question is if we need to be here for 4 hours, we can be here for 4 hours, or would you rather have 2 2-hour meetings? And that's really what it kind of comes down to. If we split it apart and we do a public hearing for the strategic planning work, whatever that may be, and then we also have other action items, those other action items could be 2 hours as well. And so, there was early on when I took on the role of planning official, there was this comment about we don't want to be here for 4 hours. In fact, much over 2 or 2.5 can get real exhausting. But that's part of the reason we moved the meetings to 6 p.m. instead of at 7 p.m. It gave us a little more flexibility, but
Then came the windmills.
right. And they were their own little things. So we'll look at the calendar and kind of sort through December 3rd or December 10th, but I think we can make either work and still get to the city council in January 5th. David, I don't know, somebody had a comment back there. Sam?
Yeah, so I would be in favor of a 4-hour meeting if it happened earlier in the evening, I guess, or late afternoon,
Okay.
just for my scheduling purposes.
So I know that a couple of you can't get here much before 5. Tonight we started at 5:30 and it seemed to work for everybody. If it did end up being a longer meeting, if we started at 5 or 5:30, I mean, we can vet these, we can continue to have this conversation. I know Zach has a hard time getting here much before 6. Although he said he couldn't make it at all tonight. They're working, they've got some project and he's working long hours. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Have that within you.
Yeah,
Right. It's going to come up. Everybody's going to have a conflict at some point in time.
Right.
So,
We
okay.
can always revisit it in a couple of months,
Yep.
I think, too.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
We'll keep
how's
you
everybody feeling?
we'll keep you posted and we'll keep asking questions, but yeah. So my only input to the discussion item on the planning official side is the ex-planning official is I just have to congratulate both Stephanie Case and Aurelie Cambero on their promotions. You guys have a really solid planning team over there.
Okay, so is that it?
Public comment.
Public comment.
I think all of our public has left.
Yeah. So do I have to read this? No. Okay. Any commissioners wish to comment? Okay, meeting adjourned.
Hey, congratulations, Sam.